The Secret Untold Truth About Vivian Vance. Vivian Vance will be forever associated with Lucille Ball. Those remarkable women can only be described as television's greatest female comedy duo. Their antics are still as funny today as they were back in the 1950s and 1960s. There is a poignancy about that TV special because it marked Vivian's final appearance on television with Lucille Ball. Over a quarter of a century after the debut of I Love Lucy in 1951, Viv and Lucy still displayed the magic quality that made them such an outstanding comedy team. The chemistry was still there. Yet, although Vivian made her reputation as Lucille Ball's comic foil, she should always be remembered as a talented artist in her own right. She was born in Cherryvale, Kansas in 1909. She was the second of the 6 children of Robert and Euphemia Jones. The aspiring actress changed her last name to Vance as a tribute to folklorist Vance Randolph, her drama teacher and a member of her Independence drama clique. She later moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where she was a founder of the Albuquerque Lil Theater. It's no coincidence that Albuquerque was the hometown of Vivian's Ethel Mertz character on I Love Lucy. In 1932, Vivian arrived in New York City and studied under legendary stage actress Eva Le Gallienne. She appeared in a number of Broadway plays, most often in the chorus. Then she began to win supporting roles, particularly after her performance as Nancy Collister in Cole Porter's musical Let's Face It opposite Danny Kaye and Eve Arden. Vivian struggled with mental illness and bravely faced her fears and anxieties. In 1945, while starring in a touring company of Voice of the Turtle, she suffered a nervous breakdown and underwent psychotherapy. The State of Connecticut Department of Mental Health honored Vivian for her advocacy on behalf of the mentally ill. After appearing in a revival of The Cradle Will Rock in 1947, Vivian decided to move to California. Her intention was to pursue other opportunities in the theater and in motion pictures. At the time, television was in its infancy and it was a medium she had not yet considered. In 1951, Lucille Ball and Daisy Arnaz were looking to cast the part of their friend and landlord on the new television sitcom I Love Lucy. Lucy had originally hoped that Bea Benaderet or Barbara Pepper would play Ethel Mertz. When they were unable to do so, Ball and Arnaz were forced to look elsewhere. Director Mark Daniels, who had worked with Vivian Vance in a theater production, took Daisy and producer Jess Oppenheimer to see Vance perform in The Voice of the Turtle on stage at the La Jolla Playhouse in San Diego. Daisy was impressed and was convinced she was right for the part. Lucy, however, had her misgivings. She had never heard of Vance, who was primarily a theater performer, and she envisioned Ethel to be older and more dowdy than the attractive Vivian. Vance was hesitant about accepting the offer to join the cast of I Love Lucy. She had been trying to establish a film career with roles such as Leah, the shrewd chambermaid in The Secret Fury, 1950, opposite Claudette Colbert and Robert Ryan, and Alicia in The Blue Veil, 1951, opposite Charles Laughton and Jane Wyman. She also had to consider the fact that television was a fairly new medium in 1951 and its future was still regarded as somewhat Despite her initial reluctance and Lucy's doubts, Vivian Vance decided to accept the role of Ethel Mertz and even gained weight to play the part. At 42 years of age, she was only slightly older than Lucille Ball, who was 40 when I Love Lucy premiered on October 15, 1951. Her character was dressed in frumpy attire and 64-year-old William Frawley portrayed her penny-pinching husband, Fred Mertz. It was reported that Vivian resented the age difference between Frawley and her. She thought he was more suited to playing her father than her husband, and it was certainly no secret that she and her television mate were not on the best of terms. Nevertheless, their on-screen partnership worked and Fred and Ethel Mertz were a huge hit with viewers. Television audiences really loved Lucy and they loved the madcap predicaments that she and Ethel found themselves in every week. Some of the show's most memorable moments featured the wacky misadventures of Lucy Ricardo and her best friend. Who can forget the classic scene with Lucy and Ethel working the assembly line into the chocolate factory? Vivian Vance's contribution to the success of I Love Lucy was rewarded with 4 Emmy nominations. She won the award once, for her performance on the series in 1953. In February of 1954, Vance accepted her Emmy, becoming the first to win in the category of Outstanding Supporting Actress. After I Love Lucy finished its run in 1957, Vivian Vance and William Frawley continued with their roles as Ethel and Fred Mertz on a series of one-hour specials called The Lucille Ball Daisy Arnaz Show, later retitled The Lucy Daisy Comedy Hour. Dacey presented Vance and Frawley with the opportunity to star in their own Fred and Ethel spin-off. Bill Frawley expressed interest in the proposal, but Vivian declined. She did not want to work one-to-one. In 1962, Lucille Ball returned to television without Dacey Arnaz, whom she had divorced. Ball succeeded in persuading Vivian to join the cast of The Lucy Show as her character's best friend, Vivian Bagley. In this comedy series, Vivian, who was trying to shed her frumpy Ethel Mertz image, appeared slimmer and more fat. On The Lucy Show, Lucille Ball portrayed Lucy Carmichael, a widow with 2 children living in Danfield, New York. Vivian played Lucy's friend and housemate, a divorced mother of a young son. Her character was the first divorcee to appear regularly on a weekly American television series. Vance, who lived in Connecticut at the time, found the commute to Hollywood very difficult. In 1965, after completing her 3rd season on the show, she decided to leave due to the strain of so much travel. As a result, The Lucy Show was revamped with Lucy's character moving to Los Angeles and Vivian's character remarrying and remaining in Danfield. The series continued in its new format until 1968, and Vivian made 3 guest appearances during its final. Lucy starred in another sitcom, Here's Lucy, with her real-life children, Lucy Arnaz and Dacey Arnaz Jr. The series aired from 1968 until 1974, and Vivian Vance made several guest appearances in the role of Vivian Jones. After being diagnosed with breast cancer in 1973, Vivian moved to Belvedere, California so that she could be near her sister. During this time, her agent made her a 3-year deal with Maxwell House Coffee. For the next few years, she was seen in many ads endorsing the product. In her personal life, Vivian Vance experienced a great deal of matrimonial woe during her lifetime. She was 19 years old when she married Joseph Shearer Danick Jr. in 1928. The marriage was short-lived and the couple divorced in 1931. Vance's second husband was George Koch, a musician, whom she wed in 1933. They remained married until 1940. On August 12, 1941, Vivian tied the knot with actor Philip Ober. Ober appeared in a 1951 episode of I Love Lucy entitled The Quiz Show and also played the part of Hollywood producer Dor Shari in a 1955 episode of the show. The marriage ended in a bitter divorce in 1959 amid allegations that Ober physically abused Vivian. He died of heart failure while working at the U.S. consulate in Mexico City, Mexico on September 13, 1982. He was 80 years. Vivian's 4th and final spouse was literary agent John Dodds. She married Dodds on January 16, 1961, and they were still married at the time of her passing in 1979 in Belvedere, California. Vivian and Dodds lived in various locations in New York and Connecticut. In 1974, after Vivian's first bout with cancer, they decided to settle on Belvedere Island. John Dodds also died of cancer on October 9, 1986. He was 64 years old. Despite her 4 marriages, Vivian Vance never had any children. After her death, Dacey Arnaz stated, "It's bad enough to lose one of the great artists we had the honor and the pleasure to work with, but it's even harder to reconcile the loss of one of your best friends." Unfortunately, Vivian died of cancer on August 17, 1979 and was not well during the filming of the show. She was 70 years old. Rest in peace Vivian Vance. Goodbye legend. Goodbye legend.